The anatomy of a framework. I have been wanting to make this video for a long time because I want to make it easier for people that want to get into coding and programming and are just intimidated by all of the stuff that is involved with getting to understand how to write software, or those that may be in writing software and don't exactly understand the fundamentals as far as like you get the syntax, you kind of sort of get some of the coding aspects of things, but then like what's beyond that and how do you go into creating your own framework, or the system administrator that is just into scripting and doesn't have any concepts around how to organize their code such that it is reusable, their modules can be incorporated in other components, and they can make simple entry points into their software so that they can use things more effectively throughout their setup and such. So in this video, I've got two software projects that are kind of sort of my flagship projects, and I'm going to explain to you how you can leverage the concepts around developing a framework and organizing your code effectively. And these concepts are in totally different languages, so this should help you understand that this isn't something that's specific to any particular language. So let's begin. The first project is written in Python. It's called YouTube FFmpeg, and it is the program that is making it possible for you to see the subtitles sitting at the bottom of the screen here, and also the part that automatically chops and removes the silence in between pauses for the typical classical millennial pause that I often take. One of the first things you'll notice is there's a series of files and directories in here. I won't get into the specifics of any particular thing, and we'll talk about it from a high-level perspective, and we'll more or less be telling a story as opposed to spilling out the details. You can definitely look up and understand how these things work. For example, the syntax format for the TOML files is actually a format called INI, which comes from Windows. It's an initialization format. Too much details, doesn't really matter. Really, you could just follow the patterns and highlight I can highlight one thing here and say the entry point is defined as YouTube FFmpeg, and I can call a particular module and a function that I wanted to execute as far as what that particular command is going to run. If you step into the library folder, you've got the YouTube FFmpeg, which is the top level namespace that's going to contain all of the code inside of this particular project. On a high level, what this project does is it takes in YAML files as configuration, it takes in your video files and other assets, and manipulates and uses those to massage some of the rough edges around using things like FFmpeg, subtitle generation, and also thumbnail generation, and combines that into a workflow that makes it easy for me to just say, build a new project, refresh your state based on what's currently in the resources directory, and then compile the final result using the description that is described inside of the YAML file. And it starts with the CLI entry point. And I could actually highlight that here in the __main, __main__.py enables you to define what you want your program to do when you call it by module. So I can say Python -m whatever, in this case YouTube FFmpeg, and it will execute the code inside of here. So if the name is set to main, then do this stuff. And basically it's just making sure that you can load up the right script and then execute on that script. Now, as far as the entry point, we're looking at YouTube FFmpeg's main function. So if we go into init, the main function is defined here. This is where the entry point begins. Basically, all programs and all software is calling a function. Whether you're starting from the BIOS, you're calling the kernel. Whether you're starting from within a terminal emulator, you're calling a program. Inside of that compiled program is some kind of a main function, a main entry point that says, I'm going to kick off operations inside of what's going on inside of this program. And your main function is basically a list of instructions that says, I'm going to do X, Y, and Z. In this case, I'm going to try to load the configuration out, and I'm going to attempt to execute the command line entry point. So we go to CLI init. Inside of CLI init, this is a pattern that I follow in a lot of my Python projects, where I'll define a CLI or command line interface entry point that describes what kind of actions are available in the command line. I'll parse the arguments so that I understand what you're asking it to do. In this particular case, I'm saying whether or not you want to enable subtitle generation, whether or not you should autoplay the video after it gets done processing, whether or not I want to do silence detection, and at what threshold of silence am I detecting what's going on. There's a bunch of other arguments and such, and then basically execute. And execute basically picks up on those actions that I defined earlier. What are those actions? You can step into the source code, you can step into the details, and you can understand what's going there. The point of this video is not to walk you through my program specifically, but more so to give you a high-level overview of how you can look at a code base, understand its entry points, and go from there. And as long as you know how to enter and step into a program, it makes it a lot easier for you to be able to navigate what's going on and understanding the logic behind what the program was trying to do. Here we are with Yaba, which is yet another budgeting app. It's a program that I created to solve the edge cases around some of the budgeting stuff, because I have like a matrix of Excel documents that are looking at CSV files that I've downloaded from my bank account. And in this way, I can do budgeting that's cheap, local, like it doesn't cost me anything other than the electricity to run my computer. The Excel documents allow me to tag specific transactions as opposed to putting them inside of a bucket, and basically makes budgeting easier for me so that I can handle what's going on with my finances and get a single pane glass overview of what's going on. If you've got a single checking account and a single credit card and your finances are dead simple, this probably isn't for you. But if you've been in situations where like your main checking account has been unavailable and you have backup accounts and you have a means by which you can still access your money even if your main account is inaccessible and you need to be able to pay your bills, I've been in those situations, so it's warranted the need for me to have backup accounts. Basically, the entry point for this is within some of the configuration files. This is an Angular project, and it's also an Electron project. The Angular aspect of it is the front end so that I can display the things that happen inside of the browser window, and Electron is the software that enables me to package it up inside of a Chromium browser. Microsoft Teams on Linux is an example of an Electron app. Signal for desktop is an example of an Electron app. To the user, it's just a window that renders your application. To the software engineer, it's a means by which I can render my application and not have to worry about what library is going to load up the window itself. In Windows, you've got COM. In Mac, you've got their display environment. In Linux, you've got X, and now turning into Wayland. These things can get complicated as time goes on, and it's really difficult to try and encompass all of that. So this project simplify some of that by bringing it down to just the part that I need to show inside of the browser. And same deal here in that I can show you where the entry point is. Since we understand it's an Angular project, it's going to have an angular.json, which is going to describe some of the things that are going on inside of this application. You've also got the web folder, which is the part that displays inside of the browser-like environment. And in here, you've got your main.ts, which pulls up your components and describes how the application bootstraps. And from here, you can look into each of these components, and you can also try and figure out how the application works under the hood by stepping into the main entry point of the application. I bring this up because it turns into something where it's kind of universal. You've got configuration files that sit at the top of the project. For example, you've got like all these JSON files and package.json and all these descriptors that describe the project for the compiler or program or whatever it is you're using in order to be able to step into the details of the application. And then the details of the application, like once you get into the main entry point, you can begin to dissect and break down all of the things that are happening under the hood in a much more systematic fashion as opposed to guessing at what it should do. So hopefully that was helpful, and hopefully you will have a little bit more confidence in being able to step into an application, understand its entry point, and understand that there's a way that you can structure your code to fit inside of a directory and organize it so that other components can take advantage of the same thing. There's this practice of DRY, which is like do not repeat yourself, where basically you try to create a unit of operation, a unit of function that can be reused elsewhere. Sort as an example, filter as an example. There are just certain things that you just do so often and so repeatedly, and that is the crux of automation engineering. Understanding that there's a process that needs to be followed, and if you can take that process and convert it into algebraic English, whatever language you use, then that gives you so much more benefit than if you were just trying to script these different components together and stitch them in ways that doesn't scale. So hopefully you found this useful. If you have any questions, you can sound off in the comments below. If you liked the video, give it a like. And if you're curious about learning more about IT, DevOps, and everything it takes for you to be successful in this arena, you should hit that subscribe button, because I'm going to be creating a lot more content around bringing you from zero to master in IT and DevOps.